Okay, take two.
Yep, take two. So today I'm welcoming Kelly. Okay. Thank you for joining us on nutrition equity. Today we're welcoming Kelly. And Kelly, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What HCU is? Kelly's the National HCU Representative.
Yes. So I am Kelly. I am the National Homocystinuria Representative with Patients and Providers for Medical Nutrition Equity Coalition. And I'm going to start off by giving you guys like a little bit of my backstory so you understand it, the things that I've had to experience, and then I'll go into what I do as a patient advocate. So homocystinuria is a genetic metabolic endocrine disorder. Your body can't produce the amino acid methionine, and too much homocysteine in the body results in things like heart strokes, pulmonary embolisms, really multi-organ issues. We'll put it that way. That's the short and sweet of it. So I wasn't caught with it until I was about 4, 5, 6, something like that. I started showing signs of it when I was like about 3 or 4. I hit all my major milestones like walking, talking, crawling, etc. And then I started losing those things. First was my vision. So my mom would say very candidly, Kelly, Barbie's shoe is right in front of you. And I'd be like, you might as well be telling me that the sky's purple because I honestly don't see it. All my teeth from here to here needed work. My teeth specifically, but all of this is fake because the roots in my teeth are very shallow. So I've had to have, I've had an arch spreader. I've had braces. I've had teeth removed out of my gums. I've had teeth dragged down out of my gums. I have had implants, bridges, denture flippers. You name it, I probably have had it done. And unfortunately, because of all of the work that they had to do, my jaw now will lock up every so often. So I have TMJ, lock jaw right here. Every so often it'll lock up. Like if you put your finger right here, right near my ear, and I open my mouth, just go, you can feel the click. That is how pronounced that click is. I have learning disabilities with math. My memory is very fuzzy. Certain things I don't have almost any memories of. Like I have very few, if any, memories prior to like 4. Some of the stuff in between now and 4 is very fuzzy. Like some things I remember really great, and then other things I don't remember at all. Unless somebody mentions it or I see it in a video or a picture, and then I'm like, oh, okay. Then it kind of jogs my memory. I have very long limbs, so long arms, long legs. I'm uncharacteristically tall. A lot of my family is tall, but I have always been the tall kid the entire time I was in school, from like the time I was 5 until so like a regular box of mac and cheese would have like, we'll say 12 grams of protein in it. A box of low protein mac and cheese would have none. Absolutely
So
none.
are there any other differences between medical food and regular?
Oh, there's a lot of differences aside from the metabolic aspect of it and the genetic aspect of it, which I am not qualified enough to speak on. Taste and texture is the 2 biggest things. When I first got diagnosed and I had to switch from a regular diet to a low protein diet, I remember very specifically the day that my mom told me I had HCU. I don't remember everything that was going on that day, but what I do remember is sitting on the stairs in our house and she told me that I couldn't have string cheese anymore. And anybody who knows me knows that cheese is one of my favorite foods. It should be in some food group, just saying.
Who isn't? Yeah.
And the
the
first words,
dairy-free just is not the same.
yeah. And the very first words out of my mouth when my mom told me I couldn't eat it anymore was, "But cheese is my friend," which is the most 5-year-old thing on the planet to say. So switching from that, like, I was really depressed, like super depressed when I had to switch. I would push my food around the plate. I was extraordinarily thin as a young child. That is not the case now. It was then, because I wasn't happy with the food that I was supposed to be eating, and I hated it. The food that was good for me tasted like wet paper mache, and it kind of smelled like wet paper mache. Just saying. It's gotten better, granted, over the years, but it's still a little in terms of variety.
The thing I've noticed with the rice, you can't rinse it like regular rice also.
Yeah, and I'm so used to doing that.
It's like sticky rice. And I've actually had a video on that on my YouTube channel.
That would probably be like a better marketing, like, it's sticky rice, like you would use for Asian food.
Yeah.
That would make more sense. Then you would know it's supposed to be like that. But just labeling it as rice is disappointment.
Yeah.
Expectation versus reality.
More medical pasta than rice.
I stopped eating the medical pasta because it was super gluey. It was hard to cook. It was expensive. You didn't get a lot of it, so you didn't want to waste what you had. And it just had no taste to it. It tasted like nothing. It didn't have a taste. It didn't have anything that actually would have made me want to eat it. Anyway,
so, how did you get into the National HCU Representative?
So, prior to COVID, I was a caregiver for several years, about 7 years. And when COVID hit, there was no way that the company I was working for was going to be able to protect me. We were lucky if we got enough gloves to get us through a regular shift. We were lucky if we had enough PPE to wear and for an 8-hour shift if somebody had, say, like the flu. There was no way that they were going to be able to protect me. And I knew it. My family knew it. So the best thing for me to do was to quit. It was a really hard decision, and it came with a lot of trauma because shortly after I had quit, a lot of my residents had passed away from COVID. And I don't really talk about that. It's just really hard. And then later on that same year, one of my old coworkers passed away. And Joanna, she was probably around your age, if I had to guess. Yeah. So it hit, and it hit hard.
I'm a caregiver. I know what you're going through.
The trauma be real.
Home. Yeah, I do it from home, and I have done it through nursing homes also.
Yeah,
but
you know exactly what I'm talking.
Totally about. Different.
It was a whole other animal. So I spent like 6 months just kind of trying, like, what do I do now? I don't have a college degree. I can't afford to go back to college. I can't physically afford to go back to college because I can't miss that many doctor's appointments, you know. And I just had to make the hard decision that this is what I have to do. And it isn't ideal.
I was going through retina detachment when that happened.
Yeah.
When COVID first started.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep. And so I had the surgery right before COVID.
I was supposed to have eye surgery a few years before COVID. My doctors told me that there was nothing further that they could do for my eyes without surgery. And I was 30 at the time. I think I was like maybe late 29 years old, maybe late 30, 31, something like that. I was I was like, I'm young. I shouldn't have to do this. This sucks. And it was the one thing every eye doctor was trying to avoid with me. The consensus was her eyes are functional, and unless we have a reason to touch them, we're not going to. Like, she could, like, if she can use her eyes, even if they're not perfect, then we don't want to like take the chance of going in and nicking something and having like a huge thrombolytic event. And that was the rule for many years until it wasn't. And that's when that was when they said there's nothing further that we can do. You have to have surgery. If you don't, within the next 10 years, you're going to be blind. So it wasn't really a hard decision to make, to go through with. Yes, it was.
Did you have cataracts?
I had lens removal surgery. So they took the lenses out of my eyes and they sewed synthetic lenses to the wall of the eye. So I have a fixed range eyesight. I still can't drive, so that has not changed. That's the good news. Nothing has changed in that department. When I first had the eye surgery, the big thing I noticed was like all the little things that I stopped seeing for 15 years. Like all the little stones in the gravel or in the concrete, all the leaves rustling on the trees, like all that stuff I couldn't see for so long. And then I started seeing it. I was like, oh my God, information overload.
Yeah.
But like, going back to your question.
It's like,
so
I'm
like,
blind and now I can see.
yeah, quite literally. So so for like 6 months after COVID, I was like, I don't know what to do. I don't have a degree. I can't go back to work. It's not safe. What do I do? Like, I have to do something. I am not a person who likes to just sit around and do nothing. It feels very counterintuitive. So luckily, I knew Danae Bartke from HCU Network America. I've known her since I was like 14. She was one of the first 3 people with homocystinuria that I'd ever met. I didn't meet anyone like me until I was 14. I was like, I don't know anybody. And now I know like a whole bunch of people, which is great.
So how did you meet Danae?
I met Danae and 2 other people with HCU when I was 14. It was at a cooking demo. I think it was like in Detroit, Southfield area.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met her. And she contacted me in October of 2020, and she said, hey, there's this group of people who are trying to get a bill passed through Congress, and the bill's called the Medical Nutrition Equity Act. And this is what it does. It would basically force every insurance company in the country, regardless of where you live, of how you get your medical nutrition, what kind of medical nutrition you need to have, regardless of your age, your diagnosis, your ethnicity, your gender, all of it. Like, it would force all insurance companies to pay for medical nutrition. And that is huge, because you can see this if you go to nutritionequity.org, you can see the coverage of medical nutrition varies from state to state. Each state has their own rules. Some states will only cover it for specific conditions. Some will only cover it until a specific age. I live in Michigan, so here's a little context for all the stuff I told you about, like my diagnosis and how I got diagnosed. So up until 2004, the state of Michigan did not test for homocystinuria at birth. It wasn't until 2004 that MBS did start screening for it. So that's why I was late diagnosed. And now we have caught at least one other person. So there are now 3 of us in the state. But so yeah, when I started doing the advocacy work, I didn't have like a lot of guidelines. Like, here, this is how you should go about it. These are the people you should talk to. It was very much an experiment in it, and I would get a lot of people saying, you need to contact your representative and your say. And I'm thinking, oh, that's cute. You think I'm going somewhere.
Yeah.
No. I can't work because of COVID and because of chronic, rare, invisible illness. I have nothing better to do but to be a pain in your butt.
Mhm.
I'm happy to bombard your office as many times as I can in the course of one day because I literally have nothing else to do except this. So that's how I started doing it. I created my own forms to help keep my information organized. And when I go and I created a slideshow just to make things easier so that the information I was trying to present to these offices were more digestible because it's when you look at a bill, it's a lot of pages, it's a lot of text, it's a lot of information about a lot of conditions. This just broke it down for our specific community and why it's so needed. So one of the other girls who lives in the state of Michigan, for privacy reasons, I'm not going to mention her name because she might not want me to. So I'm just going to respect that. She showed me a bill for her medical food, and she's about my age, and she paid $650 out of pocket for 1 month of medical food. 1 month.
Wow.
Her insurance covered nothing, not one penny. All of that was out of pocket. That for me is like the equivalent of rent. And anybody who lives on a fixed income or who is low income knows that pinching pennies means you got to cut costs. And it should never be cutting costs to save money at the expense of your health, because then that leads to other mental health issues on top of the physical health issues, which is the point that I try to make to congressional members and their staff. Staffers do not get paid nearly enough for all of the things that they do. They work very long hours with very little things. So if you ever have an opportunity, guys, to meet with a congressional staffer, make sure to thank them for their time. Trust me, it goes a long way, and a lot of them are very lovely people. Some personally I like more than others, but that's another matter entirely.
So how do you get through to the people who aren't in your state?
So I keep calling, I keep emailing, I keep following up. I post things on social media. I tag them. I tag their bosses on social media. And when they decide that they're still not going to listen, that is when I will happily go to news corporations and say, hey, look, this is what's going on. These are the people who it affects. This is the potential disaster that we're trying to avoid. And unfortunately, a really good highlight of why medical nutrition needs to exist in this country was the baby formula recall. Now,
that was when things got big.
So for those of you who don't understand what we're referring to, I'll explain. So when Abbott, the company who makes the baby formula, had their big recall last year, what most people don't know is that they also make medical formula, a brand specifically called Homocystinuria, and it's for people with HCU like me and Joanna.
That was my formula.
Huh?
That was my first formula.
I didn't discover it until after the crisis. And I actually, when they were able to release it, and I actually like it better than XMET. XMET was my first, and
yeah, you were put on a lot earlier in life.
I was
expected to have a stroke, and that's when I started believing my doctors. And so major stroke, I was paralyzed on my left side. And so that was what prompted them to put me on medical foods and formula when I said, no, I don't want the G-tube.
Yeah, because that was what my mom always tried to tell me. She was like, you can either, drink this or eat it, depending on it. Because the thing about medical formula is it's a powder, guys. So you understand. what we're referring to. It also comes now in liquids and in pill form, but when I was young, and Joanna probably remembers this too, we only had one option. It was powder formula that you shook up with water. That was it. That was the only form you had. You had very few companies that you could go to try something different, but it was all powder formula. So when I started taking it when I was about 5 or 6, it was this thick, gritty paste.
Yeah.
Unless you could manage to, water it down with water and shake it up and drink it that way. But it smelled, tasted, and looked like vomit. My mom tried mixing it, like as a paste form. She tried mixing it with salsa, and at one point with chocolate. Came right back up. Right back up. So really hard to disguise that taste.
Yeah,
But
forget on it.
it's one of those things where, like, if you know the smell of it, you know the smell of it. But going back to the Abbott recall, because I got a little off track there. So when Abbott had their baby formula recall, it impacted their metabolic line. So all these other companies, Mead Johnson, Vitaflo, Nutricia, Cambrooks, Galen, or that was formerly owned by POA Pharmacy out of England, they got this huge influx of orders that they were not prepared for. And then all of their stuff got put on back orders. And that was going on at the same time as the baby formula recall, except we weren't getting nearly the amount of attention as the baby formula recall was. And it took a year before we were really cleared by the FDA, so that Abbott could make more medical formula. And about this time last year, the FDA came out and said, you can release what you have, but you cannot make more. We have only, it was only February of this year that the FDA has officially said that, yes, you're allowed to go and make more. But the problem is just because that's when you're allowed to ramp up production in February doesn't mean that any of the patients are going to see it for several months after, which means that it's going to take years for the ripple effect of that one day in the Abbott plant to be undone for patients. A lot of us are relying on Facebook groups and each other to get what we need.
I'm one of those with Cystadane right now because I can't afford it. The price has gone up to $400 from $90.
Oh Lord, sugar honey iced tea. I feel for you because the betaine that I take, which, guys, if you don't know what betaine is, context time. Betaine is an orphan drug that it looks and kind of tastes like bitter salt. And what it does is it lowers the homocysteine levels in the blood to a safer point. So we don't have heart attacks and strokes. It is classified as an orphan drug. It is something that you use under medical supervision, and it is something that is incredibly hard to take. Some people are able to get it in pill form. Personally, I envy them because that would be so much easier. It would be a lot of pills, but I would still rather do that than ever taste betaine ever again.
Yeah, my mom used to put it in capsules when I first started with it.
Yeah, I believe it because the taste is so strong. The only thing I've ever found that kills the taste of it is soda. That's it. That's the only thing I've ever found. And it works. It's not ideal, but it works.
I use lemonade.
Oh, lemonade?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, lemonade would be a good one. It's very sweet. It's a little on the tart side, so that, yeah, I could see that working. The carbonation for me is what helps. It also helps with my GI issues, like my heartburn. that I get occasionally, it kind of helps with that a little bit. And it gives me empty calories, which is good.
That was why I was happy when the Homactin came out, because it's lemon lime flavor.
I haven't tried it. I think I did try that one time, but I was like, creamy, lemony, limey, unless it's like a key
So I mix
pie.
cream, lemonade, and So Delicious key lime yogurt.
Oh, I love So Delicious. So Delicious is a wonderful brand. They do great things. They have been able to achieve a decent cheese that is stringy, it melts nicely, and it doesn't have a weird smell to it.
Mm-hmm.
I refuse to go with some of the other brands of cheese.
I've tried medical cheese. It's not worth it.
It doesn't melt.
Yeah.
It'd be
That's
fine.
why
like
I don't. That was why. I mean, it comes
like,
in these big, huge packages, but not worth it.
Like I could see being fine in like cheese or on a taco where it's supposed to be shredded.
Yeah.
But like if you're gonna use it for like a pizza or a bagel or a pasta for like say like a roux, it won't work. It won't melt.
Yeah.
It doesn't melt well. That is my biggest complaint with medical formula cheese is the smell and the fact that it doesn't melt. If it can't be stringy and gooey and delicious, I don't want it. Texture, when you know what real food tastes like, is really important when you have to switch gears to a low protein thing, and the struggle is real. Oh boy, howdy, is that struggle real? It is so much easier nowadays because people are way more like aware of other people's food allergies. So there's way more options at the grocery store. That was not the case when I was growing up. I remember my mom tried to get me to have rice milk and I hated it. She tried rice milk with me. I think she also tried almond milk, but I didn't like it back then. I like almond milk now, but to this day, I think of rice milk and I'm like, nope, good. I'm good. I'll pass. So
Yeah, I never could stand rice milk. I use coconut or cashew a lot.
So yeah, that's kind of what I do. I'm not paid as a representative. I just do it because I remember what it was like as a kid growing up with it, and we have enough struggles without food being the added struggle to our day.
Mm-hmm.
No,
So since it still hasn't been reintroduced into Congress yet,
yeah, it hasn't.
People help out.
People need to pay very close attention to that, and it's really easy. I feel like for some people to be like, well, it doesn't affect me, so I don't care. But the problem with genetic stuff is just because it hasn't affected you yet doesn't mean it couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean it couldn't affect someone even. My second oldest brother and his wife just had their first daughter last fall, and I very specifically remember when she was born, they would tell the doctors like to test for HCU because they were aware of it. But I mean, if I hadn't been born, then they would have no idea, and they could still be passing along that genetic trait. You just never know. I had a cousin whose son has Shimtar's disease, curve on the heart, and he had to have heart surgery. Nobody saw that one coming. So I get like politics is not a thing that I think people in this day and age really want to like spend extra time going out and doing, like advocating to your representatives. Because we see it on the news, we see it in social media, we see it everywhere we go. So then it's like, at what point do we get to switch off from that? And I understand that, I really do. but it is still very important, because if we don't collectively shout like the little who's of Whoville on the flour about to get boiled in hazelnut oil, then that's exactly what's going to happen. We're going to all end up in the oil. So we all need to like collectively shout, "We are here, we are here, we are here."
Yeah.
And it's super frustrating, I think, to me at least, as somebody who's from an older generation of HCU, because we remember what things were like 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And while things have gotten better, it's still got a very, very long way to go. The quality for how it's treated, for how it's researched, for how it's understood is still so far behind other inborn errors that are similar. And it's very frustrating, because when that stuff isn't well researched, what we get is bad research. For example, story time. When I was in high school, when I had started high school, like I was coming from a very dark, very depressed place. I had sinusitis with bacteremia when I was 14. I threw up 20 pounds of my own body weight. I had to go in for emergency surgery into my sinuses. They had to take my braces out in the ER because they couldn't do any MRI tests to see what was going on. So my braces had to come out. I was dehydrated. I literally thought I was going to die, and I was scared. And what they found was that not only were my sinuses clogged, but my internal carotid artery to my brain is narrowed. So blood thinners for me. Lucky me. And of course, now my running gag joke for that is, ladies, don't ever complain to me about your period, because until you're on blood thinners, I guarantee you it is not going to be as worse as it is when you're on blood thinners. Just throw that out there. That's my one joke for it.
Yeah.
But when I started high school, I was really depressed. All my peers were like concerned about who are they going to take to the dance, and what boy or girl likes them, and when do I get to go to start doing driver's ed. And I was thinking, I just want to be left alone. I just spent the last month being poked and prodded and with needles and having people come in and flash lights in my face, and I just wanted to be left the hell alone. I fell into a really bad depression for several years because of that event. And I got really tired of people telling me how my life was going to end. Because from the time I was diagnosed, people told my parents, she's not going to live to see 13. If she lives to see 13, she's not going to live to see 18. If she lives to see 18, she's not going to graduate high school on. If she does graduate high school, it won't be until her mid 20s. So all of that was just really negative, like beating this awful narrative into not only parents, but also kids. And so I just started doing my own research on HCU. And what I found was a very terrifying statistic that said undiagnosed HCU patients will die before 25 or 30. Imagine being 17 and reading that. So for the next 15 years of my life, practically, I woke up every day thinking that I was going to be dead by 30. It was a really hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
Everybody, and then there were insurance battles when I was in high school. And then some of those things didn't get resolved for 10 years until I was 26. And what infuriated me years later was, obviously I've been lucky enough to live past 30. I'm 33, almost 34 now. But what I'm finding out now within the last 4 years is that research that I read when I was 17, the one that traumatized me so much, wasn't even using homocystinuria patients. It was using people with high homocysteine levels.
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
To somebody who doesn't know it, good luck.
It's like comparing a horse to a Lamborghini. One of these things is not like the other.
Yeah. It's like, how do you get through to a doctor who only believes the others? The other doctor.
Or how do you talk to a dietitian who's only used to treating PKU patients who've been diagnosed from birth?
True.
But we're late diagnosed. We know what regular food tastes like. Therefore, diet compliance and medication compliance is going to be that much harder. One of these things, again, is not like the other.
Yeah.
You need to go back to Sesame
You smell
Street.
it, you want to rip it out of their hands.
My God, the amount of times that I had to talk to dietitians at one specific hospital who just didn't get it, made my head hurt. And it made me hate going to those appointments. I remember very specifically one of those appointments because like it was 4 hours away from us. So it's a 12-hour day for one appointment. And I hated going to these appointments because I was talking to people who didn't understand and couldn't be bothered to listen. They just wanted to it felt like they wanted to get in and out as fast as they could and on to the next person. I was just a blip on their radar. And I remember very specifically, or very early in the morning before me and my mom left to go down to that appointment, I remember thinking, I'm going to need this later, I sense. And I took a shot of vodka because I'm like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I don't want to talk to these people. I don't want to go into this appointment. This is driving me nuts. And it would stress me out. Your medical office should not be a source of stress. It should be a source of safety.
Yeah.
So
then there's the problem of when you have a doctor who you tell you have an issue with protein and they want to test whole protein. We can't do that. We don't know how to test an amino acid.
Figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, my head. The amount of times that I would weigh and measure everything that I would eat for 3 days leading up to my blood work, and for it to still come back high or they screwed it up.
Mm-hmm. Especially when they're measuring folic acid.
Oh my God, it used to drive me crazy. Me and my mom would get a range. It would come back and say, your homocysteine levels are somewhere between 30 and 90. And it's like, oh, sorry. So yeah, like we would get these ranges. We'd do all that work for the blood work, weigh and measure everything that you would eat for 3 days prior to the blood work. And they would come back and be like, your homocysteine levels are somewhere between 30 and 600. And it's like, I'm not diabetic. Yeah. A range ain't gonna do diddly for me. Yeah. Narrow it down more. To go from that to opening up a patient portal and seeing my homocysteine levels lower than they've ever been, is such a night and day experience compared to where I was at within the last 30 years. Mm. And that is very much because of the research that's being done now. I'm in, Joanna knows this, guys, but just for context, I'm in the middle of a clinical trial with a company called Trevira Therapeutics. They do a lot of wonderful work for the HCU community, and I'm enrolled in enzyme replacement therapy. I do get, so they come in twice a week. We do injections. The injections for the dose is by weight. And so for me, I have 7 shots that I have to give myself twice a week. So 14 shots a week. And I get welts from them currently. And they itch like a mofo. Oh my God, do they itch. and it gets rotated between where we do them, between my legs above my knees, to my stomach above my belly button, to my arms up here. And the itching is real. Oh my God, is the itching real?
You
I
tried
can't,
Benadryl for that?
huh?
Can you do Benadryl? Can you use Benadryl for that?
I can use anything over the counter or topical. They just can't prescribe anything because it is a clinical trial, which I understand. Really, I've been told don't do ice because it can create cold induced hives, but actually ice is the only thing that actually keeps the itching away. And I'm like, it's either I scratch myself, which will give me a rash, which could become infected, or we're going to do ice. Your choice. It's either A or B. There is no in between.
Yeah.
Like, I got shots in my legs the other day and my arm up here started itching, and I was like, I want to claw it off. I want to claw it off. I want to claw it off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny how those people become part of your family in a lot of ways. Like my nurses for the clinical trial, there's 2 of them and I adore them both. And I spend more time with one than the other, but I love them both dearly. They're very sweet women, and I'm very, very lucky to have them as my nurses. I was raised by a lot of strong women around me. My mom is one of them. The other one is my aunt, and both of them are like super, super like well organized with medical stuff. And I still remember the intake evaluation from the clinical trial. And there were so many things that were missing from that needed to be there. Like they gave you the syringes and the needles and the tubes to take the blood, but nothing to ship it with or in.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my head. And for context, guys, it needs to be shipped frozen. That's why it was such an issue. But this lady had so many things in her car because she had experienced this before, and I'm like, you would give my mom and my aunt a run for their money, and that is saying something. So it always cracks me up, like when I find those people who are super well organized, and I'm like, oh, God bless you, you understand
You're
the
one of the most
assignment.
organized people I've seen.
Who is?
You are.
I would severely disagree with that, but I'll take the compliment regardless. Thank you. I'm only as organized as I am because, one, I have a lot of wonderful friends who are willing to come and help me when I'm having low energy days, especially my roommate. Bless her soul, because she knows all too well of my low energy issues and my dietary issues and my mental health struggles from having HCU. So she's very patient with me about that, and I'm immensely grateful. And it's because of those people that I am able to take care of myself. And when I'm able to, even if I do like one thing a day, like, okay, I don't want to clean the bathroom today, but I can physically handle going through old doctor records and organizing stuff for myself. So when the time comes where I'm going to need it.
Of your politicians and things like that. And it's like, wow, she's spending a lot of time on organization.
I prefer things to be organized because I like being able to find them quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you should know this statement. If you've worked in healthcare, then you know the phrase of cover your butt.
Yep.
Which I always thought would be the funniest tramp stamp on God's green earth for a nurse to have. It feels a little on the nose. So strange as it is, the HCU is not what made me organized, but it is a side effect of it regardless. I think I spent more time around doctors and nurses and dietitians growing up than I did around teachers and my own peers, which is probably why I get along with Gen Xers and baby boomers, because I have more in common with them both in terms of life experience and in terms of medications than I do with most 20 and 30-year-olds.
See, I would think of that as a person who has died, because it's when the morgue, I mean, when they draw that chalk outline of you after you're dead.
That is very much what it was, and God bless my mom and the doctors and nurses and dietitians that would come through that room, because Lordy, they were patient people. God love them.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But there were so many memories. I think I spent more time around doctors and nurses and dietitians growing up than I did around teachers and my own peers, which is probably why I get along with Gen Xers and baby boomers, because I have more in common with them both in terms of life experience and in terms of medications than I do with most 20 and 30-year-olds. What I remember doing for my eye surgery was like, it was so bad. Like if my camera was the mirror, I'd be like up here like this close getting my eyeliner and my mascara on. I'd be like, I think I can see. I think I can see. I think I can see.
Yeah, I used to do that too, but
it's funny now because like I don't have to do that. It still feels so unnatural somehow.
Yeah.
Like I'm not having to hunch in like this close and be like, oh, there's a smudge on my mirror. Gee, where'd that come from?
Yeah, I find that if I get too close, it's like I can't see anything. It's like,
yeah,
if you
that's exactly what my issue is now too. Is like if I get too close, it gets blurry. Not a problem.
If you are following this, please like, subscribe, share, comment. To not only this, but my YouTube channel. I am at Rare Chef on YouTube.
She's also on TikTok for the
Yes,
rest.
I am on TikTok under Joanna Ball 1. I'm on Instagram under a Sedative Cash. Facebook
You're on Twitter
is
under
Joanna Ball.
Sedative Cash too, aren't you?
What?
Aren't you also on Twitter under Sedative Cash?
Under Twitter. On Twitter, I am Josie1971.
Oh, okay.
Why?
If you guys want to follow me on social media, I am on Instagram and Facebook as the National HCU Rep. If you want to follow my personal page, that is Zebra Stripes HCU, H like Henry, C like cat, U like university. I'm also on TikTok underneath the Zebra Stripes HCU, so if you want to follow me there, you can.
And if you want to check out more on the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, go to nutritionequity.org.
And don't forget to contact your representative and tell them that they need to reintroduce the Medical Nutrition Equity Act
whenever Senate decides to go back to work,
so that the next generation of HCUers does not have to go through what we have had to go through.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me on.